Hey, I'm Neil. I've lost my job before, and I know how quickly your mind can turn that into a story about who you are and what your future holds. In this series, I want to talk about how to notice those stories, unhook from them, and take action to move towards your next step. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the third video in our series, the third and final video talking about how we're going to move towards values-based action. This is not about taking some gigantic, heroic act, right? I'm going to go get a job in one day and everything's going to work out. The next job I have is going to pay $1 million and it's going to just lift me out of everything and all my problems will be solved. It's not going to be that. But we are going to talk about taking small actions every moment that you notice so that you can move collectively towards a future that represents your values. Once again, I'm not a licensed psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I am not here to diagnose or to treat you, but I am someone who has been through the harrowing experience of depression and anxiety around job loss and about finding one that fits you and solves the problems. And I'm glad that you're here with me. I'm excited to share the things that I've learned and the things that really have helped to make a difference for me as I am looking to really understand myself better and move to action. When we talk about values, right, it's again, that's a phrase that we think we know, or at least I thought I knew until diving into it. But I really learned that there's a lot more to the idea of what my values are than I once thought. A value is not the same thing as a goal. This is a critical distinction I want to make sure. Get a new job is a goal. I can't control that goal. I know what that sounds like, or at least I know how it sounds to my mind. Isn't this guy supposed to be teaching me about like finding a job or like getting motivated to go find a job and he tells me I can't control that? Well, yes. I want to really drive this point home that you can control what you can control, right? In the first video, we talked about noticing our thoughts and the stories that our mind tells us. And in the second video, we talked a lot about accepting those and understanding what was in and outside of our control. And so in this third video, we're going to talk about moving towards acting on our values inside of what we can control. So I want to get a new job. Okay, excellent. I can't control whether somebody gives me a job or not. That's somebody else's decision. But what I can do is decide how I show up in those situations. I can decide how I'm going to apply to jobs or how many jobs I apply to. I can't make somebody accept my applications, but I can control how I put myself out there into the world. A lot of times in ACT, right, in acceptance commitment therapy, because spoiler alert, that therapy is great for way more than just people who are struggling with the anxiety and depression that comes around job loss, which that alone, if it only solved those problems, I think the world would still be wildly in need of it. But as I've experienced working with other men in the men's group that I've been a part of, it's very interesting to see how often things like, well, I would love to be in a committed relationship. I would love to be, I would love it if my family members would accept me or treat me a way that I would want. I would love to be able to, uh, essentially, I would really rather the world outside of me engage with me how I want. Those are fine things to want. But again, as we learned in video 2, what we're really seeing is that this is the mind highlighting what you value as an individual. because I can't make someone love me, right? There's plenty of stories in the world about love potions and how it doesn't really work out that way, but you can strive to be the kind of person who loves how you think love should happen, right? If you go, man, I really wish I could find somebody who would recognize me as a hard worker or a great programmer. Okay, well, what you can do is to strive to be a great programmer, as in I can control how I'm going to study one tutorial a day, right? I'm going to study how to use AI, and I'm going to show people how here's an AI program that I use to process images or resumes or things like that. You can't control whether or not people look at that and go, "Oh, that's amazing, here's a job," or I don't care. But you can control how you show up for it. I don't want us to get bogged down in the idea of perfectly picking all the values that 100% encompass you or me as an individual. Values, they don't tend to shift a lot day to day, but I also think that they can grow, or at least the details thereof be can unfold to us as we go through life. A few examples that I have down on my cheat sheet here: dignity, courage, honesty, connection, care, responsibility, learning, stability. Goals can be blocked by the world, but dignity, courage, honesty, you can decide if you treat people with dignity today. You can decide to be courageous in a way that matters to you, right? You can say hi to people around you and practice connection with other humans. Some of them may reject you, right? This is kind of like the interesting part that I've seen with people who are trying to do this with um, uh, dating, right? Something that comes up for young men that I've seen struggle with some of these elements are going, well, what happens if I go talk to the girl and she rejects me? Okay, well, your goal is to get a girlfriend. Okay, fine goal, but you can't control that. But your values-based actions can be, I'm going to go talk to 10 people that I don't know tonight at this party, at this mixer or wherever, right? You can control how you show up in the world. To me, this is the power of recognizing the difference between values and acting on your values and goals, right? We tend to have a lot of goals for ourselves. Uh, I want to be paid this much. I mean, I'm thinking of the goals that I have, right? I want to be paid this much. I want my YouTube channel to be recognized. I want to, have all these great things that really I can't control. But I can control sitting down and making this video. I can control uh, making sure that I do my best, or at least a decent job, to write decent descriptions and tags and all that stuff for the socials. I can't control how people accept it. But, and here's the critical piece, the piece that blew my mind when I read it. Well, honestly, I don't know if I believed it at first, but when I started living it, it changed my life. When I act on my values, at the end of the day, even when my goals are not achieved, I feel proud of myself and I feel like I've lived life well that day. As you've experienced the different things that you've experienced after losing a job, wouldn't you like to be able to say that? That, hey, I didn't solve all my problems today, but I'm proud of myself and I'm proud and I feel pleased with how I lived my life today. That's especially in the dark times of anxiety and depression that come with experiencing job loss. That's magic, right? That's the kind of thing where it's like, whoa, this changes my perspective and it gets me out of that fear, fight or flight, and into curiosity, right? I think about how can I live this way tomorrow? One of the main traps that we get into with experiencing the depressive thoughts, the anxious thoughts of losing our job is waiting for things to get better before we act. I'll reply to that email once I feel more confident, or I'll apply to that job once I feel like I'm really, really awesome and feeling great, right? Once I'm feeling happy and excited, then I'll put myself out there. There exists a two-way street between the mind and the body, right? You've heard the phrase fake it till you make it. And I think that sometimes that's applied glibly without a lot of understanding, as if uh, faking it means that it is entirely inauthentic and that you'd be better off just like, never doing anything until it's just never faked. Instead, I want to encourage us to leave that mindset behind and to move towards understanding that if I don't feel particularly happy, but I still take a chance to say, well, but I believe in giving a smile or waving or, showing a connective kindness to other people around me. So I'm going to do that anyhow. Not because I necessarily feel just enthusiastic about that, but because I value it. And what are values, if not what I want to see in the world that I often find missing? So when then you go out and you say, I'm going to go smile at some people, you tend to feel better. You tend to feel different. This is the effect of going to bed at night, and even if nobody else saw you live your values, right? Even if all the goals that you wanted weren't exactly met, you can feel better knowing that you acted according to your values. If we wait until all the difficult feelings are gone, we may never move. In ACT, the invitation is, can I make room for this pain and still take one step towards what matters, aka what I value? The action does not have to be impressive. This is the key thing here, right? We tend to think that, well, actions are going to be saving, the orphans from the burning building, or rescuing the damsel in distress, or like going in and just being a boss babe and just saying, I'm CEO now. Those can be stifling traps to get into that mindset of thinking it has to be big or it's not even worth considering, and so I won't do it. Sometimes your act of value, as in acting according to your values, maybe I'm going to get out of bed today, I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to try to eat something healthy, right? And healthy not being like a crazy meal, but I'm going to try to eat a piece of fruit. Right? These can be things that you might be tempted to think are small, but when you are in a state of feeling a lot of those heavy struggles with, the mind is presenting lots of stories of you're a piece of crap, or you're misunderstood, or nothing's going to go your way, everything's terrible. Give yourself some kindness and recognize that the first step through a dark path is a one step, right? Even an inch moved forward is still progress forward. Now, as you think about this, your mind might go to places where it's like, well, yeah, but if I'm struggling, feeling depressed and feeling like, oh, yeah, I don't matter and, I don't have a job, how is like making myself, a piece of toast where I usually don't eat anything, that's not going to get me a job. I know, I know. But remember, as we observed in videos 1 and 2, when we notice the stories in our mind and then we are willing to accept them, this helps us to get out of the places that are so sneaky that our mind gets into, of the fear, the fight or flight, the reactionary survival areas of the mind, And when we can get out of there and bring more consciousness, more curiosity in there, then we tend to just naturally feel more curious. And we tend to approach the world around us with a much more uh, values based and, quite frankly, optimistic way to look at things. When I dealt with this most acutely was a couple years ago, and I've been unemployed for 9 months, right? I think at that time I was unemployed for about 7 months. And it occurred to me, I'm going to go try to clean up my garage. And it was interesting to observe. My mind the whole time is saying, this is stupid. Cleaning your garage is not going to help you get a job. And, I was okay. I submitted my minimum amount of job applications to keep unemployment, stuff happening or whatever, but I was not doing well. And yet, spending a couple hours in the garage cleaning, I felt different. I felt like I thought that was impossible, which maybe you've never felt that cleaning your garage is impossible, but it's the kind of thing that technically isn't impossible, right? It's not technically impossible that you'll ever get a job again. But as I walk out to the garage and I look around and see, well, that needs to be cleaned, that needs to be that, and then that, and I see well, if I'm going to clean that, I'm going to have to, sort this and then clean up that. And it's like 5 stacks of jobs for just one job. That's the sort of stuff that gets overwhelming, right? If I'm going to get a new job, I'm going to have to refresh my resume. And then I'm going to have to contact people, message people, and that'll feel, kind of pathetic. And right. But when you can take a step in that direction, and I didn't clean the whole garage, it's still somewhat messy, but it's cleaner than it was. And it was because I was able to say, I'm going to clean this section, right? I value being able to make connections with people. So one of the things I've done is I've said I'm going to try to every once in a while, but maybe today is that one step. I'm going to thank somebody on Facebook for a kindness that they showed to me, right? I'm going to show gratitude because gratitude is a value of mine. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it gets me into a mindset where it is much more likely that I will be able to continue to work towards and be open to solutions to the things that I want to solve. I've occasionally talked to people or observed people in these group therapy things that I participated in, and very much felt this myself. We'd say, well, I don't know what my values are. What are my values? Um, I found that this was an interesting exercise in my head, and I'm not sure that this works well, but try this with me and see what you experience. We're going to try to just sit here, and we're going to sit here, close our eyes, take a nice deep breath, right? Deep breath in, breathe a little bit more at the top, breathe out. Now we're going to just sit here. And as you sit here, this is at the heart of many forms of meditation. You're just going to observe your thoughts. And in particular, I want you to notice what comes up in terms of thoughts around, I'm just sitting here and I could be doing something else. What is that thing? As you sit here and you think, I much rather be hanging out with someone else. Maybe you think, this is great. I don't want to be hanging out with anybody else. Maybe you think, I'm worried that sitting here, something's not going to get done. What is that thing? As you think about these things, Consider those the body trying to highlight your values, right? If you are saying, Yay, I'm glad no one else is here, okay, you may value solitude. You may value opportunity for stillness or contemplation. If you were thinking, man, I'd much rather be going and doing this thing than sitting here watching a YouTube video of a guy close his eyes and meditate, fair enough. That thing, it may be more than just an action, right? I mean, it may be something like, I just want to go get a candy bar. Okay, but perhaps you value delight. Perhaps you value novel experiences, right? You're thinking, I'd like to go watch that new movie, right? Perhaps you value creativity or enjoying creations made by other people. Do you see how we could get together and I encourage you to do that exercise and see if you can, maybe sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. Write down what comes to mind of what you wanted or didn't want to do, where you wanted to go. The idea that somebody says, well, I just don't have any values. Without sounding too obnoxious, I just don't believe that's the case, because we are creatures meant to be in motion. Even when you may be sitting there going, well, but some of the days that I'm feeling really depressive and sad, right? I'm feeling really anxious and just feel like sitting in my home and just kind of curling up and hiding from the world. So be it. But perhaps you value safety. Perhaps you value stability, and you're not finding it where you want it. Fair enough. But again, remember that we are looking to take an inventory of what we value, not because it itself solves our problem, but because when we know clearly what we value, we can then work to move towards those things in small ways every day, so that at the end of the day, we can feel contentment, even as we also feel sadness and worry and and all the other things that come along with a lack of a job. It helps me to feel more of a balance there. So it's not just all heaviness, worry, sadness, sorrow, but to feel like, okay, but I've got these other things. I've noticed now that one of the most important things that I can do is to go play guitar with some friends or to make a circuit board. I made a circuit board the other day that uh, I have a degree in electrical engineering, and this circuit board is a joke. It is nothing impressive, but for one weird reason or another, I have always feared making my own circuit board, or at least worried I wouldn't do it well. And so I just sat down and said, you know what? I value creation, and this is something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I did it. And and I kid you not, I ordered some to be made, right? 5 of the circuit boards. And before they'd even got into my house, I realized, oh, I made mistakes with it. And I already made a version 2. But the feeling I had of knowing that, I value creation, I value art, I value electronic. I mean, maybe that's a strange thing to value, I suppose, but I value uh, creating interesting things, maybe is a good way to say it, right? If you look at my channel, you could see where I've been playing guitar and making pedals and, all that stuff for a long time. But I've not done that because even when I have a job, I've thought, well, but it doesn't pay much and everything's got to be about money. But life is more than just your employment status. And so these are how while yes, we want to be real about the pain and the need and the troubles that you might have in the employment section of life, those are fair. Those are real thoughts that, again, we're practicing how to accept them. But to be able to hone in on what our values are so that we can make sure that we are living those in our job when that's an opportunity, and outside of our job when that may not be what we're dealing with right now. So here's the simple framework I want us to think about when we're looking at this. It's essentially four steps I want us to ask. One, what is the story my mind is telling me? What feeling is here? What value might this be pointing toward? What is one tiny action that lines up with that value? Again, for the person saying, well, my mind is telling me that I am alone. The feeling is, I feel lonely. The value might be that I value intimate connection with people. I value friendship. I value love. I value romance. What is one tiny action that lines up with that value? I'm going to go walk around and say hi to somebody. It might and probably won't, if you're just walking around in a neighborhood, result in instant, and that's how I met my wife. Maybe not. And if it does, please leave a comment below. That would be an awesome story to hear. But what it does do is it moves you one step closer to living that value. And your mind is one more opportunity acted upon of living out that value. So that the next time you think, well, yeah, I said hi to that person, and then tomorrow you're at the store and you say hi to that person, right? Let's bring it back more to specifically focusing on job, right? That going, well, the 4 steps. What story is my mind telling me? Well, I don't have a job. Take your pick. I don't have a job. My skills aren't great. Uh, I am worried that I am going to be underpaid or have to restart my career, right? Well, restarting my career, right? What is the feeling there? Well, it's fear. Okay. Well, then what is the value it might be pointing me towards? Um, it could be that I value the experience that I had in my career so far. I value the opportunities and connections that I've made, so I don't want to lose those. I value the paycheck that my current career trajectory has me getting when I can find a job. Okay, remember, we're not in the mode of trying to judge and say, that's a dumb value. You value what you value. You just do. By highlighting and getting concrete with what you value, then you can move on to step 4. What is one tiny action that lines up with that value? So for me, sometimes it's, okay, the story my mind is telling me is that my mind says to me, you are a clever dude, but people don't know about you. And so you're going to struggle to find a job. And the feeling is I'm scared, right? I feel perhaps intimidated, or at least feeling unknown. And then the value that this might point towards is something like along the lines of, well, I value connection. I value uh, I personally value creating things that many people get to enjoy. I actually love public speaking. It doesn't mean that I'm always the greatest at it, but I love the feeling of being in front of an audience. I love performing. And then when I think about that, I think, oh, well, then I'm going to make a YouTube video about the things we're discussing. I'm going to put a social media post out and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. These are my skills. I would love to connect if you know anyone who's looking for my skills here. Not because that is going to instantly guarantee me a job. It probably won't. But when I go to bed tonight, having done that, I can think, hey, I took an action based on a value and move towards something that, yes, of course, I hope ends up resulting in the goal. I have a goal to get a job. I only control planting the seed. I only control tilling the ground and getting it ready. I can perhaps water it, right? I can wait for the rain, but I don't actually make the seed grow, but I cultivate a landscape in which growth is most easily accomplished. Growth is most likely to happen. And when I approach things with that mindset, I've seen some amazing things come of it, and not just for me, but for other people as well. And I know you can be one of them, not because I know exactly the specific date and time you'll get a job, but because I know that adopting this mindset of awareness of your thoughts and the stories your mind tells you, acceptance of the thoughts and the stories your mind tells you, and then, even while you are feeling them, the good, the bad, the ugly, the difficult, the happy, the troublesome, you move towards acting on your values, not the stories. This is some interesting stuff to get into, and I want to give our mind a second to digest it. And I want to go through a grounding exercise. This is actually one of my favorite things. Uh, I won't try to pronounce uh, the Sanskrit word for it, but essentially this is something I learned from Dr. K, right? Alo Kanoja of Healthy Gamer GG, and it's alternate nostril breathing. But the idea is that we're going to breathe in one nostril and then close that nostril up, breathe out the other one, breathe in, close this nostril up, and breathe out. So you could use two fingers if you want. I like to do this because then you can uh, alternate just like a little hinge thing for the sake of making sure you could see instead of just me looking like I'm doing some sort of I don't know what this looks like. It's strange, but let's try it. Okay, let's do this for a few iterations. So I like to close my eyes too. Please join me. Switch. Breathe in. Switch. Breathe in. Okay. And now as you sit here, notice the slight stillness of your mind. Notice that you have a little bit of calm. Again, the whole point of me going through grounding exercises and trying to demonstrate them with you, and I hope you're following along. If not, consider going back through and scrubbing the timeline and finding the grounding exercise and doing them with me, is because when you do them, it changes the physiology of your body. It doesn't change the goals that you have may still not be met. But when we change our internal state, we are in a position to be more curious and creative about how we interact with the external world. That is one of the main points of grounding, so that we can simply connect with this moment, and then we can get back to working on acting according to our values. Here's the homework for this section. And this is what we've been leading up to with this entire video series. For the next 24 hours, I want you to choose one value and one tiny action. Notice how I'm giving you 24 hours and one tiny action. You may be tempted to think, "Ugh, well, that's too much time. You should be saying over the next week, I want you to live your values, 5 times a day." Okay, okay. But before we get to that point, I want you to experience the full cycle of what we're talking about here. I want you to notice your thoughts. I want you to accept them and to pick a value that you can do one tiny action. I can't put my ring finger up and leave my pinky down. So forth. We'll leave hand signs out. But I want you to pick one small action that you can do. The value I want to practice today is one tiny action that expresses it is story that might try to stop me, what I can say when that story shows up. So, for example, if I want to practice the value of dignity, I can take a shower and I can eat lunch. I could lift some weights, I could go for a walk. The story could be, this doesn't matter because I still don't have a job. Or, well, you're still out of shape even if you go for a walk around the block. You haven't lost 50 pounds and got, some chiseled body. My response can be, thanks, mind. I know we're scared. This is still a towards my values move. Thank you so much for joining me on this video series. I hope it's been helpful. I know that these things have really been helpful for me. I struggle with this stuff just as much as the next person. I am becoming more and more aware of how necessary it is to practice these things. Even if you think you know about them, it's the practicing that really makes the difference. Being able to recognize your thoughts takes a bit of practice. Being able to catch yourself so you say, oh, I see that my mind is telling me this story again. Being able to choose how you show up in the acceptance category of going, well, that's my mind telling me this story again. Okay. That's my mind telling me that story again. Okay. We're not trying to shoo these things away or silence them or rush to get them through. We're just saying, okay, these are the thoughts that are hanging around. I don't have to act on them, but I'm not going to pretend they're not there. I'm not going to pretend I don't feel pain or worry or sadness. And then finally, when I choose to think of what are values that I can do, I notice that I'm much less egocentric, right? As in like, oh no, what will people think of me? I just think of that element less. I just think, well, I value kindness. So this is how I'm going to show kindness to somebody. I value social connection. So this is how I'm going to socially connect with somebody. When I focus on these things, I really do see a difference in my life. It's not that life becomes perfect, but just like building muscle doesn't mean that you never have to lift anything heavy ever again. It means that you are instead more capable of being able to lift things as the opportunity or the necessity comes your way. Losing your job is hard. That is a heavy, heavy thing to lift. We have a wild world right now. Maybe now has always been weird and always been chaotic. I kind of think so. No matter what time you find in the world's history, now has always been a scary time for people. And we living in, the now right now tend to look back at history or read accounts from people, right, and think, well, yeah, they thought they had it bad, but we tend to just look at that and think, but that was a given, right? That war that went through or that great hardship for humanity, That's just how it went. We are living now in the things that back then they also had now to live through, and they struggled. Human beings are going to experience frustrations. I'm not saying this because I don't want you to think about how to improve these things or to believe that life can't change or life has always been bad or hard. There's probably, give and take and good times, bad times. But I really want you to consider that as you work to practice what we've talked about, that you will grow and you will build muscle. And though nothing outside of you will change inside, you will feel stronger and more capable of meeting the outside world. And thus, perhaps paradoxically, that is how the outside world can be changed for the better. My name is Neil. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining me on this series. I hope it was helpful. Please leave comments on any of the videos, any things that you'd actually like to see more of, or things that you thought were confusing or I didn't cover well. I would love to know about. I would love to make more videos if it is helpful for people. Practice, move towards, and you got this. You got this more than you might realize. These are the steps to really capitalize on it. Capitalize on the things that you value. And I would be very willing to bet that you are stronger and more capable and your values more deeply appreciated and beautiful than you realize in those hard times. Go get it.